I was reading in 1 Kings, and the Lord told me he had an insight he wanted me to share. This is in relation to the word about hearing his voice. So please pray for confirmation and discernment over any words that you hear. So I will briefly read in the word verses 11 through 15 in 1 Kings chapter 19. This will be the New King James Version. And so to begin, then he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. So it was when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I have been very zealous of the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenants, tore down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." Then the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Syria." And that's verse 15. I'm going to stop there. So the insight the Lord gave me is that, the mountain top where Elijah was positioned to hear the Lord, the wind, the earthquake, and the fire are all God, right? They're all layers, but his voice was still and small. And so the Lord was showing me that sometimes many of his children will have things revealed to them in layers, especially in dialogue. They're trying to learn how to hear his voice. They're trying to graduate. They're trying to, make sure they're wanting to walk in his will. However, many of his children are impatient. They're not letting patience have his perfect work. And they want more of a microwaved quick answer instead of understanding the very nature of their father. And so what he was showing me is that maybe sometimes some of his children will sit at that mountaintop and they get to the wind and I heard God, and they go run out and then they go teach something that God never told them to, because the fullness of the revelation, right, which we read in 1 Kings 19, which is actually God's revelation to Elijah, is the title of this passage. So they'll get up and run off after they have that encounter with the wind, and they go say something that God didn't give the fullness before he gave instruction. And so in what we just read, you see that he gave Elijah instruction. Elijah was positioned to hear God after experiences which were all God, right? And they're all very prophetic in itself about what each represents. But nonetheless, after Elijah heard his still small voice, he then positioned himself at the entrance of the cave, and then dialogue started happening between him and the Father. So he didn't just hear his voice, but then now he took it to the next level where he was actually having a whole conversation with the Father. And then the Father ended up giving him instructions about what to do. And so this is how revelation and communication with the Lord happens. And a lot of his children get caught up in the layers of it instead of waiting for the totality of what God is trying to say or reveal to them. And there is a beautiful sister in Christ. I have her blog on my website for those who just want to hear insights from the Lord and the ways that she presents and how God has called her for her ministry. But there's a beautiful article that she wrote on her blog in regards to hearing God. And there is one point that I want to stress, because this ties into the insight the Lord gave me, and that's sometimes when you're talking to God and you're wanting to make sure you understand his voice and his will over things, you may ask God, "Can I go outside and wear no pants?" God will say yes. And you would think, "Oh, he said yes, I can do it." But can you and should you are two different formats of which you will present something to God. So then if you go to God and you say, "Lord, should I go outside with no pants?" He will then respond and say, "Absolutely not. Your body is a temple. You don't try me. Don't you dare do it." So it's difference between, can I do something? Because there is permissible will. There's also free will, right? There's so many things with will that God won't infringe upon, but should you do it, right? And so in the same way, we should be understanding communication with the Father. In similarity to this example is that when God reveals something to you, or he's giving you revelation, and you don't wait for him to give that fulfillment of it or that explanation, happen. So let's say you get at the earthquake part of the experience of getting ready to hear God, and you just, I heard God, I got the insight. Now I'm going to base it on my own understanding, and I want to use my discernment that I have based off of what I kind of have a layer of, and I'm going to just go run out and do that. That's absolutely wrong, and you can actually put yourself in some condemnation territory, because now you're stepping out, especially if you're trying to put yourself in the role of a teacher. Like, it's one thing to be excited, and it's another thing to put yourself and actively pursue a platform based off of experiences of God and not dialogue, right? You're on the right track. You're just putting the cart before the horse. And so what the Lord was showing me is that many of his children don't wait for the fullness of a revelation from him or an explanation. So he was showing me that they get caught up in the experience because they have their own urges, right? Your own desires about wanting to interpret or wanting to kind of go in a direction you want, and you just want God to co-sign that. And I've seen this happen before, where somebody will misspeak out of wisdom, being devoid of wisdom. They'll speak on something without having waited for the fullness of the Lord's instruction, and then they ended up causing somebody else to stumble, not realizing that that was never for them to do in the first place. And so I've seen this happen where God will tell somebody something, and they'll think that that is him saying it in finality, like that's just it, God said it, that settled it, and then they go run and explain that to others, when God is like, actually, I wanted you to come deeper and wait upon me. So after I reveal myself in other ways, but get to the still small voice of revelation, then you would understand what I'm saying. And the example of this I seen with somebody that was classifying themselves as being a part of the 4400. For those who don't know, it's in Revelation. And I remember going to the Lord and saying, I didn't discern that on this person, so I'm wondering, can you explain it to me? It's not my business. Truthfully, it's not. But I always go to God for all things, because he's a good God and he'll answer, like I did with the false prophet Tiffany Montgomery. And so I went to God about this same person, and I asked him, like, where's the disconnect? Because you're not an author of confusion, and I am not you. So whatever I'm discerning, you gave me the gift. I'm going back to you to understand what it is that's going on. And he was showing me that he was allowing this person to understand that being a part of the 4400 doesn't make you special. It doesn't make you any lesser of value in his eyes. So in essence, everybody is, because God doesn't play favorites. Now, there is certain responsibilities that he has constructed differently in his word, but the way that men interpret it based off of their voids in their heart that have not yet been surrendered to him, he was showing me that he was allowing this person, where he told them, yes, remember the example I gave you, like, can I? He'll say that, but when you go into him, you'll start understanding the dynamics of where that was, because he was just trying to reach this individual in a way of identity. He didn't want that person to feel that they didn't have any importance, because a lot of times people cleave to stuff to feel special, but by whose design? Because God already thinks you're special. He knows every single thought, every single hair strand on your head, and like other stuff, right? And so once you get into a place of identity with him, it matters not if you're 4400, not 4400, if you're Gentile or not, right? Like Paul taught, we all are, none of us deserve anything. God's grace is just good. We all have it. So job responsibility is an indication of, I am mighty in the Lord, and look at me now. Now I have something to feel good about, like the Girl Scout badge or Boy Scout badge of honor, right? It's just not something. So anyways, that's an example of this, because when God reveals a layer, it's not for us to just take that layer and just be cool with it, or take that puzzle piece and be cool with it. It's to continue to wait for him to reveal it. And so sometimes that takes time, right? We're such a microwave quick generation. We don't want to wait. There have been revelations that I didn't get fullness of until like years later, sometimes months or weeks. So waiting upon the Lord is so key with this, so that you're not running off in misunderstandings and then being confused later as to why it didn't turn out the way that you thought, especially when you heard God, because God was the wind, he was the earth, and he was the fire, but he was the still small voice. And even at that still small voice, Elijah then positioned himself for instruction. So then he got further revelation, where God was able to kind of shift through his heart, right? Elijah was depressed. God said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I'm the only one. Like, just great, you know. And then God said, you're not the only one. And then that's when he explained, I have a remnant and I would like you to go do this. Now I want you to find somebody to get ready to take your place and role in position, because there were probably some other things going on where Elijah was just getting ready to like, Lord, I want to go rest. I want to be at home. If I had wings like a dove, then I'd fly away and be at rest, right? So then he did, actually, in a chariot of fire. So nonetheless, what the Lord was showing me, I ended up having a vision of a dam, and a dam was blocking this flow of water, and it was like a natural dam, so it wasn't like man-made, and the flow of water was coming out like, in trickles and little streams here and there. And the Lord was showing me this is how some of his children hear him. They hear him here and there, but there's still something blocking off a steady stream of flow. And a lot of the things blocking off is not just the enemy. We give the enemy too much credit sometimes. A lot of times our flesh that's not quite circumcised needs to be removed. There's things in our life we have to admit, like, Lord, I'm terrified of maybe hearing from you, or Lord, I have some pride in me because I battle identity, or Lord, I am battling a sin that I need help to overcome, whatever that looks like, right? And it's not always condemning, but whatever that looks like, the Lord was showing me in this vision that a lot of it is not just oppression, and it's not just the attacks and the warfare of the enemy, although corporately speaking, a lot of that is because of the enemy. And God has given us tools and things to overcome those walls and hurdles that the enemy does. But nonetheless, I saw that, and the Lord was showing me that these hindrances basically stem from a place of not sitting still, not being at rest in him. And he said, waiting on him like Elijah did to reveal himself despite the experiences. And again, just to go back, a lot of times people have those experiences, or they will hear God maybe in little words or phrases or statements, or when they have dreams or visions or revelations, but they don't wait on his revelation. They just take it and run. And I have seen this happen. Just with another example, I had a prayer request for like 15 plus years, and I finally got the answer by the grace of God and his mercy. He answered me after all these years of interceding, and it was a time to be rejoiced. But another believer who was not yet sharp in their gifting to see God in it, they only focus on the enemy, robbed that moment of joy. And the Lord told me it was because this individual was devoid of wisdom. So you don't want to be devoid of wisdom while you're operating and trying to hear his voice. You want to position yourself to be still and wait upon him. So I hope this makes sense. God bless you guys.